Hi VC, Dale Gatefold 33 back again to do a second response to a thread around vocal performances. So I shot one earlier this morning when the sun was shining, although it got a bit dark and black just towards the end of the video as the clouds came over, and now it's raining in the UK where I am, which is welcome. The garden needs it. So hence the lights on. It's not ideal. So this, as I said, is a second video that I'm doing to the same thread around 10 vocal performances. I did 12 in my previous video. This time there are 10, but it's a bit of a hodgepodge of a number of ideas I had of how to do a response. So apologies, I haven't stuck strictly to the letter of the thread again. So this thread was originally started by get this right, Rachel TheMusicMAM VC is her channel name over in Canada, and she picked up on it from a comment and got the thread going. So this is my second response, and so I should say, when I listen to music, I tend to get drawn more in by the music than the words, the vocals, and the sound of the vocal rather than the actual words. Sometimes I do pick up on the words. Obviously, there's a really strong message. I hear the message, but often it's the music that draws me in, and the tone, and the melody, etc., etc. So this is going to try and showcase that. But sometimes the lyric does pique me, either emotionally or just out of interest or amusement. So I'll try and cover all of that in 10 songs if that's possible. So starting off with, and I also tend to go for melancholy over upbeat. I try and obviously get a mix to keep some balance in my life, but melancholy is probably the tone that attracts me as well more. So with the sound in mind, I was going to start with the sound almost in terms of either wordless vocals or slightly foreign vocals, or where you're not really following the words, you're definitely following the sound. So first example of this is the great Ed Adele, also, who was a vocalist who worked a lot with Ennio Morricone on a lot of his films, and one that definitely springs to mind is the opening to Once Upon a Time in the West, where her voice just sings through that opening scene, the opening scenes of the film, which is a fantastic film, and a fantastic opening sequence of music and song, albeit wordless vocals. So that's a sort of a first example of it. This is a rather kind of crappy budget copy. It's the only one I've got on vinyl. I have got it on digitally. So this is a bit of a crackly. It's a budget press, but it does the job. Second example is a band that I do love, I haven't mentioned before, Dead Can Dance. So this album, Into the Labyrinth. So Dead Can Dance, if you don't know, are a duo of Lisa Goddard and Brendan Perry. I think originally from Australia, or they may be back in Australia, but they were over in the UK for a bit, and they've been performing since the 80s. And until last year. I think they had an album out last year. Love all their stuff. I didn't get the album last year, actually. I was a bit disappointed by it, but I love all their stuff, or nearly all their stuff. And it's a really, really atmospheric sound that they create. Lots of orchestral pieces, dark, and they often kind of interchange what Lisa will sing one song and Brendan will sing the next song. That's through their albums. That's how I've interpreted it anyway. And so on the opening track on this, Yulunga, Lisa Gerrard just does a tremendous vocal performance. Really evokes the mood of this album. This is a great album. So if you want to dip your toe into Dead Can Dance, well, most of their albums. I think their first album was a little bit more sort of indie and less of the sound that they went on to create. But there's then there's a run of 5 or 6 albums where they really do nail that sound. But this I would heartily recommend. And so that's 2 examples of that kind of sound or wordless vocals. Then moving on to sort of through into the melancholy and a more plaintive sound. And I've got 2 examples of that kind of plaintive melancholy. There are words now, but it's the sound that tends to drive it. You don't always follow the words, although there's more words in what's going on here. So first example is Blue Nile, and Paul Buchanan, who's the lead singer of the Blue Nile, and a track that I would choose from that is Let's Go Out Tonight. If ever there was a track to make you less likely to want to go out tonight, it's Let's Go Out Tonight on this album. But very kind of plaintive melancholy vocals with beautiful sort of musical arrangements around it. So that's the first one. And then second one, probably even more even strongly and probably more likely or more common, it Talk, Mark Hollis, unfortunately passed away not too long ago, but Mark Hollis, the lead singer and kind of the lead of Talk, and the whole of the first side of this album, but I think it's In Rainbow, I think it's called, is the kind of open track, but the whole of the first side is just one long piece of music interspersed with Mark's vocal, kind of plaintive vocal singing, and again the words don't really matter to me on this, it's the sound. So that's my second example. Now moving on to what they're saying in the lyric, so when I have kind of paid attention to the lyric, so some songs, and the first few, I'm starting with the first three, the next 3, they are ones where they've tugged at my heartstrings, shall we say, with just a kind of very simple lyric. And for this I'm going to have to bring up the lyrics because I don't want to misquote them. Here's one I prepared earlier, he says. So the first one, and I should have showed this when I showed my A to Z, actually. I think this is certainly top 3, if not my favourite Neil Young album, and even though it's a fairly late Neil Young album, and this is Harvest Moon, which I think was a kind of follow up to Harvest almost 20 odd years afterwards, so I really like this album, and I was lucky enough to get an original European or UK vinyl copy of it at a record fair. Indeed, the guy at the record fair, this was he had a one box of rock albums and about 10 boxes of jazz albums, and this was about 7 or 8 years ago. And in the one box of rock, there were some real stellar ones, and he was asking ridiculous prices. So I got this original Nick Cave Murder Ballads, and 2 or 3 original Tom Waits albums from the 90s that end up being £7 each. And I really kick myself now that this was 7 or 8 years ago when I wasn't at all into jazz. The VC has got me into jazz because he had boxes and boxes of jazz albums, probably priced at silly money, if I only knew then what I know now, that I could have really picked up some stuff. But I got some really good finds, because all the records were virtually unplayed. They were mint. Anyway, I've digressed. This album, the song that I would choose from this album is Unknown Legend, and what I love about this song is within 2 short lines in my mind I can picture the scene. So it starts off with, she used to work in a diner, never saw a woman look finer. So instantly I'm in sort of picturing a US diner, a guy watching a waitress who he's kind of falling in love with, or or finds attractive, and kind of that's just set the, and you don't know where the song's going to go after that. But what I also like about the next line is, so the next line, which is two lines, but it's delivered as a single piece, actually evokes the movement that it's trying to describe. So the next line is, I used to order just to watch her float across the floor, and he sings it in that kind of single line, even though it's two lines, which you can picture this woman walking towards him to take his order, if that makes sense. So yeah, and then the rest of the song is also equally kind of emotional and inspiring. So that's a kind of first example of what I mean by this. So that's Neil Young. Next is more of a poppy. So I have to move on to the next. More of a poppy song, but it gets me. So it's and it's one of my all-time favourite bands, XTC. And not one of my all-time favourite albums. This album I'm a bit hot and cold on, to be honest. I think I like the cover more than I like the album, but it's got some absolutely fantastic songs on it. I just think it's maybe just not as a complete package. It doesn't quite stand up to some of their other work. But the one song on here called The Mayor of Simpleton, which is a song about a guy who's not the brightest guy, but he's an honest, loving person. And so this is the lyric is repeated a number of times. It's an Andy Partridge song, and Andy Partridge is a fantastic lyricist, songwriter, but he'll go on, he'll describe different things that he can't do, but then sort of say, therefore, and I may be the mayor of Simpleton, but I know one thing, and that's I love you. Which shows that emotion can sort of and love can kind of dominate any kind of other things in the world, or something like that. I'm going a bit over the top there, but yeah. So love that. Next, we'll move on to an artist who is one of my favourite artists. He won out in the W battle in the A to Z of artists. He won out over Scott Walker. And that's Tom Waits, and again I'll need to bring the lyric up, and this is a slightly more obscure song because it's on his Orphans. He brought out I got it originally as a 3 CD set of B-sides and outtakes called Orphans, and it was themed was it Ballers, Brawlers, and something else. I got the first two on vinyl when they reissued them on vinyl a year or two ago, and I got the first two because they really like me. The last one I'm less taken by, so I haven't bought that, although the collector in me will probably buy it at some stage, just so that I've got all three in the set. You know what it's like. But on the middle one, Ballers, which tends, as you kind of can imagine, tends to be ballads and kind of love songs. There's a song called Never Let Go, which gets me every time. So it's delivered. It almost starts. It's like a hymn in church, in terms of the way it opens. You can, in fact, you can hear the congregation shuffling at the beginning before it gets going with the piano intro, as if the kind of the person in the church or church hall is about to bang. It's not a brilliant boom boom on the piano, and then it's a love song, but it's about a guy. I think it's like down on his luck, falling apart. His life's falling apart. Maybe his relationships falling apart, and several times repeated is the song I'll Never Let Go, but it's about whatever's happening in his life, he'll never let go of her hand. I'm assuming it's her. So example here is well, you'll leave me hanging by the skin of my teeth. I've only got one leg to stand. You can send me to hell, but I'll never let go of your hand. And it's just every time that line comes in, it's like boof, boom, for me. So that's another choice, Tom Waits. and then my final kind of well, no, sorry, they're the three that are kind of get me with the bang of the kind of emotion. The next three have got me with the kind of, where did you come up with that as the lyric? But it's kind of segues in, because this next artist is still a bit of a melancholy. Oops, I got the wrong one up there. Sort of melancholy pop, if that's a term. And the artist is a band, Camera Obscura, and Tracy Ann Campbell is the lead vocalist. And whatever they sing, they sing about all sorts of things, and they've got wonderful lyrics to some of their songs. There's always a kind of melancholy lilt to Tracy Ann's voice, that makes everything, no matter what it is, subject matter it is, sound a little bit melancholy. If you know that, so check them out, you'll know what I mean. But on this, there's a song called French Navy, which is quite a stomping, poppy song, and there's a line that opens the second verse, which just like, why, where. So it starts off with, and there's just amusing, so is what I'm getting at here, is it's you with your dietary restrictions said you love me with a lot of conviction. And it's just like, why would you choose dietary restrictions in a song? It's just like, where do you get that from? So it sticks with me because it just amuses me. And so what kind of when I listen to this song, I know it's coming. And kind of, so it brings a bit of a smile to my face when I play this song. Similarly, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. So love Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. He was my letter C in the A to Z of favourite artists. Unfortunately, I was due to see Nick Cave in London at the O2 next month with my wife, but obviously that's been rolled forward to next year. And this song, this album's it's a double album. It's Abattoir Blues and The Lyre of Orpheus, and it seems to be kind of two sides of a coin. And on Abattoir Blues, there's some if you like more upbeat, or certainly sort of louder, stronger songs, more. And one of them, every time, makes me smile, is Nature Boy. So it seems to be a song. I don't know if it's a biographical or autobiographical song about how he met his current wife Susie. And I only say that because some of the references when the lyric, I'll tell you, it seems to reference her, but it may not be about her at all. So it's a bit of a love song. Talks about how you met someone, how you got with someone, and kind of how the relationship developed. But it's the bit where he uses a lyric or words that I just think, wow, where did you get that from? Without further ado, so again, it's talking about meeting this person at a flower show. So I was walking around the flower show like a leper coming down with some kind of nervous hysteria when I saw you standing there, green eyes, black hair, up against the pink and purple wisteria. And it's just the fact that you've got hysteria and wisteria. I've never heard a song with wisteria in it before. So that's kind of, I don't know, it's a little bit into the song, and every time the song comes on, I'm waiting for that lyric just so I can smile a bit. So that's that one. And then finally, I haven't got this on vinyl. I'll just pick up with a song that just, again, kind of makes me smile when it comes on. It's quite a long song as well, just because of the, if you like, the audacity of it, or the so it's on this album. It's Robert Wyatt, Sleep, and it's Blues in Bob Minor. So what this is it's Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues, sort of a homage or whatever, a take on it. Where Robert Wyatt seems to talk about, so rather than talk about, if you like, what's going on in US society and US politics, he talks about what's going on in perhaps in UK society and UK politics through a song, and a whole load of completely jumbled lyrics, but you can follow the thread of what he's trying to get across, or certainly that's how I see it anyway. So that's the final one. So hopefully that made some kind of sense. if not to me, to you, or rather, if not to you, to me, when I play it back. So I'll stop there. It's nearly 20 minutes, but cheers, bye.